A little bit of a delayed start there. Sorry about that, everybody. I realized that I made a small error. I hope the viewers on the John E. Hoover YouTube channel will be getting our live stream. There we go. I pulled it out at the last second, John. You know, there's all kinds of technical things that can go wrong, but I think we've got it straightened out. Let's see if we begin live. How are you today, John?
Well, I still can't believe it works. I can't believe we do this and that it actually does this simulcast. And again, I don't think the audience understands the production that you're doing in real time,
It's
let
quite
alone
tricky.
when you're walking around the city and you've got this stuff strapped to your forearms. People don't realize that nobody else is doing what you're doing, man. Nobody's doing this.
Thank you for mentioning
walking around and showing people. And quite frankly, if the audience hasn't seen your videos of you walking around New York City and showing people what's happening, like I said, no one else is doing what you're doing. And the perspective that I'm getting from afar of what's happening in New York City from your walkarounds, I mean, it's devastating.
It is
devastating. And if you were an investor that had investments in New York City, real estate investments or whatever, and you saw your broadcasts, I mean, it's meaningful. What you're showing is allowing people to make meaningful decisions about the rest of their lives. So let's leave it at that.
Well, thank you for the compliments, John, and I agree it's very troubling what's going on in New York City. I'm glad I was able to get that error corrected just before the start so that viewers can enjoy the simulcast on the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. In furtherance of the Mutual Appreciation Society, I want to make sure that people know John is doing an array of excellent videos, and along the lines of what we're discussing with the difficulty of making this technical stuff work, YouTube was down the other day, and just earlier today on the David Hawkins Discovery CSI show, Vimeo was down. So there's been a lot of internet outages. I do want to point out that if people missed our show last week with Dr. Judy Mikovits, I really would encourage people to become sponsors and check that show out. You can see it on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, as well as Subscribestar and Patreon /Crowdsource the Truth. We couldn't do this show without the sponsors. And the thing that was amazing about that show with Dr. Mikovits is that she sent me an email just yesterday saying that the information that you brought forward, John, was, it included a lot of things that Dr. Mikovits and her associates were not previously aware of. So this is the whole entire point of Crowdsource the Truth. Dr. Mikovits is an expert in virology. She's a PhD in microbiology, but that doesn't mean she's read every single thing on the internet or seen every bit of data. And when we can bring people from disparate disciplines together to share all this information, it creates such a powerful tool. And John, I think this is why so many different entities, basically enabled by social engineers, are trying to crush Crowdsource the Truth and crush me financially and
the John E. Hoover channel. So, we're both experiencing various types of attacks to the channel. So videos of mine that are 2 years old are being flagged as not appropriate for people under 18, and they're not. They say they're not for children. So people are flagging my videos. I think they're flagging your videos and basically reporting us, trying to stir up trouble. So, people have got too much time on their hands. I try not to let it upset me. I just keep my nose to the grindstone and I keep churning them out. And I figure, YouTube is going to pluck one or two off. The video that I made about the resurrection of the virus was taken down. And I had something in there that was, quite frankly, I kind of thought I might be on thin ice putting it in the video. And I was kind of questioning which is what. and they didn't like that, and so
Well,
that got
let's
taken.
not. Yeah, we'll talk about that
Yeah,
in
yeah,
more
yeah.
detail.
Yeah,
I mean, we go to this
but this show,
alternate platform because there's certain stuff that they don't want us talking
that's
about
it.
here.
That's the only reason we're doing it. I mean, if we could monetize this and do this here and talk about this stuff here, we would. What the hell? It's so complicated.
There's
Going
another
back
reason,
and forth.
actually. There's another reason why
Yeah.
I'm doing it, because I determined very early on that since YouTube is such an established platform, I mean, YouTube is basically mainstream at this point. It was clear to me that it was being used as a control mechanism for people. If you want to do reviews of toys or what's going on with the new iPhone or the new M1 chip for the Mac or the new operating system that just came out, how to fix your Tesla, they'll let you do that all day. But the second you start questioning the mainstream narrative that's being put out by the news or whatever, they can use the monetization on YouTube as a throttle where they cut off that money and then you can't say anything anymore. Or if they zap your videos and you can't publish on YouTube anymore, then you're shut down. By moving us over to this viewer-sponsored platform, there is no one powerful entity that can just shut us off. If people don't like something that they see on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, or likewise on Subscribestar or Patreon/Crowdsource the Truth, they could just terminate their sponsorship, speak with their wallet. If we become so objectionable, everybody would do that and we would go out of business. But the problem that any advertiser-driven entity faces, we've seen it happen to Tucker Carlson and other people, even if the advertising entity itself wants to support that broadcast, they get letters and boycotts and everything, and people put pressure on the companies to not advertise. We're trying to eliminate that and make a direct-to-viewer sponsorship program.
Indeed, indeed. And we've got a heck of a show today. We've got basically 3 shows in one. So in this, I look at the show that we do here on YouTube as sort of chapter 1 and chapter 2. And then when we get to chapter 3, 4, and 5, that's when we get into the stuff that's, it's a little sketchy. We're not sure. And this is where we get into hypotheses and things that some people aren't comfortable with us broadcasting here. So we,
But I don't think any information that...
Lost your audio. I lost you. You just cut out. Stand by, folks, and I'll tell you what we're going to cover in the show. So we've got 3 different tracks that we're going to cover today. And in this show, we're just going to touch on each one of them kind of lightly. When we go to our patron-only hour at Subscribestar and Patreon, we're going to dig into these each rather deeply. One of them, one of the stories here is the story about this HAMR Scorecard. And the reason that that's interesting has to do with the work that Jason did on this about 1.5 years ago. So Jason was covering this before it was in the mainstream news. And there's a cast of characters here behind that part of the story, including Bill Binney from the NSA. I just heard something. I heard it and then it's gone. So Bill Binney from the NSA came on the show with Jason and talks.
Probably have terrible quality audio now.
Yeah, I hear something buzzing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is my backup system that's intended to provide backup backup video for you in case of an outage of Skype, which was a problem long ago. And what's happening now is there's an entire system here that processes my audio, and it has totally crashed.
Uh-oh. Well, you'll do your thing. I'll tell everybody. I can talk to this stuff. In fact, if you want to go to the next slide, I can talk to. Can you hit that for me? And then I'll just keep going. And one more. There we go. All right. So in this show today, we're going to talk about 3 big topics. I guess on Friday, a week ago today, right after we did this show, on Lou Dobbs, Sidney Powell goes on Lou Dobbs and starts talking about HAMR and Scorecard software being used in the election. And I had never heard of HAMR and Scorecard, so there's my mea culpa. And I sent a text message to Jason, and HAMR Scorecard Sidney Powell was the whole message. And Jason texts me back, social engineering. So immediately my yellow card goes up, my yellow flag goes up. And I go dig into that a little bit, and I realize that Jason spent so much time on HAMR Scorecard a year and a half ago, had Bill Binney on the show, et cetera. So he's got a whole bunch of stuff to share with you guys now that this is front page. So now that Lou Dobbs and Maria Bartiromo are talking to Sidney Powell, I wanted to get Jason to catch everybody up on this whole backstory, because I think Jason and I agree that the HAMR Scorecard nomenclature is being used in a social engineering type of manner. So that's that aspect of the show. All right. How are we doing with audio? We still rebooting? Okay. The second aspect of the show is what Jason mentioned before, which is YouTube went down Wednesday night. Jason was getting ready to do a stream. I was getting ready to do a stream. And all of a sudden, YouTube just was down. And the question is, did you guys see the gorilla? Did you see the illusion? Because there's a whole lot more to that story. And we're going to take a look at that when we go into our deeper dive. And I'll show you some things, what happened there. And then the third aspect of the show today has to do with how, CNN, I hear something, CNN, MSNBC. All right. Welcome back, Jason. Show. So the third aspect of the show, on the third leg of the stool, Jason talked about this on his walk around last night, which is this guy Trey from. Go back. Yeah. So Trey in the lower left-hand corner. So Trey is the head of the election committee, and I've got that video queued up. So we're going to listen to what he has to say, and we're going to talk about why your vote is really not for president, and how CNN and MSNBC and the Associated Press and all these folks are like jumping the gun. At the Kentucky Derby, they don't call the race in the bend. They wait for the horses to get across the line when they call the race. Or at least that's all the ones I've seen. Same with the Preakness. They usually don't call it until the horse crosses the line. Well, why is December 14th so important? And we're going to look at that when we do our deep dive in Patreon. So those are the three legs of the stool. So let's now go to the next slide, and we'll just kind of touch on each one of these before we have to go to our Patreon only hour. All right. So YouTube goes down Wednesday night, big service outage. Something's going on. Jason, you got cut off. I got cut off. The next morning, I put out a video addressing what happened. And my subscribers on my Patreon and Subscribestar were able to see it early in the day before this story came out. Then this came out. And what we see is at the highest levels, the cybersecurity people in the United States are losing their positions right now. Something happened on Wednesday. I don't know if there's a correlation between the two, but I reported this Thursday morning. In fact, after what happened to us Wednesday, I just kept going. From that point, I didn't sleep, and I did another one of these 20, 30-hour things. So I just kept going to dig up everything that I published Thursday morning, your time, gets ahead of this story, and then this comes out later in the day, and then another one. Go to the next page. All right, so this guy gets whacked. All right, so there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here behind the scenes having to do with, I believe, what happened Wednesday night. And there's probably a whole lot more to the story. But again, these are just early pieces. This is a new story. This just happened Wednesday. And we're going to do a deeper dive and take a look at this and see, well, what the hell am I talking about? Why do I think there's a link between this and us not being able to watch YouTube on Wednesday night? What the hell's the connection there? So we're going to look at that. Go to our patron only hour. I'm going to show you why. So let's go to the next slide.
To note, John, Huffman Aviation says nice leather strangler gloves. And the only reason I bring it up is because when we were just looking at this picture of President Trump a moment ago, I don't really recall ever seeing him wearing gloves before.
I don't know where he is, but,
I guess it's cold.
I guess so. I could go
hat. You
I used
know?
to wear gloves like that. Black leather gloves with cashmere lining. I mean, he's a classy guy.
Oh,
He's got great stuff.
very nice.
All right. All right. So the first aspect of the story, go back to our three-legged thing. There you
Sure.
go. All right. So this is going to act as sort of our agenda for the show. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your vote is not for president. And December 14th and why it matters. So now let's go to the next slide. Let's dig into this for a second because it's kind of the most boring part. All right, so CNN declares Biden. Biden defeats Trump in an election he made. Okay, very nice of them to declare this. Let's go to the next slide. It's fabulous. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so CNN, there's you got your Jake Tapper. He's already mocking you if you voted for this or that. Here's the Associated Press. Now, remember, the Associated Press edited that footage out. Remember, we had the body cam footage from inside the suite in Vegas. And the Associated Press edited out like that same 17 seconds that the New York Times edited out, right? So I'm not sure we can trust them anymore. And I think, weren't you telling me that Colby mentioned these guys by, like, called them out on Mockingbird? Like, this was...
Yeah, they said that the Associated Press, I mean, they name a few during the Church Committee hearings. I think it's Frank Church who's doing the questioning. And they say the Associated Press is one of the journalistic entities that is influenced by Operation Mockingbird. I've been doing a lot of research into Operation Mockingbird because it's actually a topic at issue in the NATAS versus MSD, the lawsuit where the Emmys are suing my corporation. This is one of the questions at issue. It may be unprecedented in civil legal conflicts that the Emmys have now given me an opportunity to subpoena the CIA. And I'm going to be doing that through my lawyer who's representing me. The case is moving forward. So everybody who's sponsoring the show and has sponsored the lawfare, the Counter Lawfare Fund, is participating in potentially a historic endeavor.
Well, there's a whole state's secrets clause that if you trip it, would be amazing. We need to do a show, or you need to do a show with Larry on state secrets, because if you dig too hard and you hit the metal box, they go state secrets, and the whole thing is just gone. So it'll be great if you do that.
I don't know if you knew this detail about the Hammer, John, but Larry Klayman represented Dennis Montgomery for a time, and basically,
that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Hold on to that. That's where we're going to go. The patron only hour is we're going to go deep into this because there's so many characters, right? All right. Before we go there, this part, you were talking about this on your walk around yesterday. This is Trey. This is the guy who's the head of the Federal Election Committee. And this is the interview that he did. And we've got this video queued up for later. Okay. Great. So we've got the video is all queued. It's in the video I sent you. I sent you that video in the zip file. Yeah. Right. So it starts out with Kayleigh McEnany, and then we go to this guy. He's the second part of the video. So we're going to look at this. And the question we're asking here is, are there rules for elections? You showed this in your show last week, or I think we were on, it was our show, and I think you pulled it up, and it was only on screen for maybe 10 seconds, and then we kept going. But there's rules for elections. Imagine that. And guess what? They don't mention CNN. CNN and the Associated Press are not mentioned in here. So what we're going to do in our patron-only hour is we're going to go through the friggin' rules, and we're going to read them, and we're going to figure out how do they actually do this, and who does what, where, and when, and how the hell does CNN get to jump into the fray and declare XYZ if these are the rules? So let's go to the next slide.
It's a little bit Alexander Haig of them. You just sort of show up and say, I'm in charge here.
Oh, it's worse than that if you go to the next slide.
Yeah.
It's way worse than that, because who is CNN? Next slide.
CNN is owned by AT&T.
Right. So first rule of Charles, first rule of Ortel. Who is AT&T, or all those characters, right? And then we go to the next page, and it gets even more fun. criticisms and controversies having to do with censorship, the Hemisphere database, and privacy controversies. Oh, did somebody say privacy controversy in NSA? Let's go to the next page because we have so much to cover. Oh, isn't that your favorite AT&T building, the 33 Thomas Street?
Yeah.
All right, so that is the parent company of CNN. Let's not mince words. That building is AT&T. That company is the parent company of CNN. Where does Anderson Cooper work?
Yeah, CNN. And well, the CIA. I don't know which.
Well, he did work at the CIA when he got out of college. So that's not a conspiracy theory. We know that. But now he works for CNN, which is AT&T, which owns this building. All right? We got a nice fine point on it, right? Does Bill Binney need to spell this out for us, or we got this? This is CNN, folks. Okay?
I think I've mentioned that I no longer trust Bill Binney, and I have a lot of reasons for that.
All right, well, that's a different topic, but when it comes to HAMR, simply, you did do an interview with him and you talked to him about it. And
yes.
Whether or not he's, thumbs up or thumbs down in your book right now.
We got info from him. Sure.
Right. We'll take that into consideration when we consider what you heard from him, what you heard from Kevin Shipp, what you heard from that lady. I mean, there's so many characters here. That's why we need the Patreon hour and a half to get into this. Yeah. All right. So that's the HAMR story. So let's go to the next page here on the HAMR. Let's go next. All right, so, again, we have this video. This is Sydney Lou Dobbs. She also goes on Maria Bartiromo. And this is, I talk a lot about Brer Rabbit and those stories, the Brer Rabbit stories, the Uncle Remus stories. And the role, you can just go to the next slide. I got it blown up on the next slide. Just go to the next page. I got it blown up. There you go. So the role of the tar baby in these stories, the Uncle Remus stories, and I want Jason to, so I think of it this way. So this is my belief system, right? We talk about Albert Ellis and activating events and then beliefs. So my belief system has got a lot of Brer Rabbit and Tar Baby in it. And your belief system, you're going to bring the story forward and you're going to help everybody understand what I think of as a Tar Baby. I think this HAMR and Scorecard thing is designed as a trap.
Yeah.
And is designed to make whoever mentions it sound like a dipshit because they brought it up, right? So you're going to explain that to the audience when we get to our Patreon-only hour, and I think we've only got a couple more seconds or slides here, so let's just make it real quick. And let's see what else we've got. Yeah, so this is the author. So Joel Chandler Harris is the author of the Uncle Remus stuff. And, this is important literature. Brer Rabbit's a crafty dude. And the Tar Baby concept is what we're talking about here, this trap concept. And this is absolutely applicable. And I think when you explain this to the audience, they'll understand the connection here. So this is how I think of it. So let's go to the next page. I think of it more of a literary sense. All right, then the final piece of the story tonight. YouTube went down. Did you guys see the gorilla? All right, so all the stories in the press. Let's go to the next slide. All the stories in the press about YouTube. So this is what it looked like on my channel when we were trying to post, right? We were trying to go live with a live thing. You had the same thing happen, right? But all the stories, let's go next page. You just keep hitting, down. So this is the head of IT at Google. This is how you run these IT centers, right? So this is the kind of software I used to implement. And the guy whose picture you just saw is Ben Fried. Ben is the CIO of Google. And he's my former client.
Wow.
All right. Yeah. So go up a page. That's Ben. So before Ben was at Google, he's the CIO of Google.
Chief Information Officer.
Correct. And before he took that job, I think he left Morgan Stanley in 2008. So 12 years ago. Before he took the job at Google, he was at Morgan Stanley. And when he was at Morgan Stanley, he was my client. So I got to work with Ben on a lot of stuff, a lot of money, big projects, big stuff. Smart guy. I think he wrote the Kerberos version of Mozilla or something. I mean, the guy's like a brilliant programmer and a really good guy. And man, has he got a lot of responsibility. So you go to the next page, and these are the kind of systems I was doing with him. So these are the systems you use to manage the data center. So he was responsible for the data center at Morgan Stanley. Go to the next page. And what we're going to look at tonight when we go to our patron only hour is, was there something else happening besides just YouTube? And that's what you're going to find out. So we're going to go to the next slide. I'm going to show you animations from around the world. And so we'll stop here. So we've got video clips. We've got the deep dive into all three of these legs of the stool. And that's where we're heading tonight.
So you might consider this something of a stool sample, perhaps.
Indeed.
Sorry, John.
Well put.
Couldn't resist.
Well put. Well, it's funny you say that because, I'm looking at the art department's thumbnail work tonight. And I think, again, between this thumbnail and the thumbnail you did a week ago with Charles with the Kung Fu thing,
right.
Certainly there's some sort of an award in your future.
Perhaps an Emmy.
Or perhaps. You might
You
end
and
up with
I
a whole company by the time you're done with them.
Yeah, we've really plumbed the depths of what can be done to get you struck on YouTube. And we definitely invite people to join us on the sponsor exclusive segment. It's going to be coming up in less than 5 minutes. There's a ton to discuss. Vimeo is back in action. People have been watching David Hawkins' Discovery CSI, our episode earlier today, where we were talking about the hammer and how it is a social engineering play. I want to make sure that people don't misunderstand what we're saying. Absolutely agree that there does appear to be digital interference, hacking, manipulation of the voting. There are a lot of indicators. There's a lot of evidence. But when we're dealing with something complicated like this, and particularly when there's so little time to articulate it, it's got to be put into a legal case. We know that the president has assembled an elite legal team that does include Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, Lynn Wood. We want to be very careful that no social engineers are able to inject a poison pill into that defense that could just knock the whole thing out of the box. So people are going to join us in just a few minutes on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and Subscribestar and Patreon/Crowdsource the Truth. Thanks for watching, everybody. We couldn't do these shows without your support and sponsor.